Kia ora, I'm Helen Lockett and I have a strategic advisory role for the Equally Well Collaborative in Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Kia ora, my name's Caro Swanson. I'm Principal Advisor for Mental Health and Lived Experience Lead for Te Pauati Whakaranui and long-time Equally Well champion.
Thank you very much, and you're pioneers of Equally Well globally.
And it's just amazing to be here in Australia.
Yeah.
It's just been an incredible couple of days, hasn't it?
It's totally been an amazing couple of days. I mean, we've been doing our initiative for a while now, and it was really cool to come in to Australia here and just hear where you're at here and all the things you're doing, and just feel really reignited about a lot of our stuff as well,
Yeah.
The two of you presented together, and you showed some beautiful slides about the relationship that you have of trust and respect. How important is that to the work that gets done, and was it intentional or very lucky?
So I think it grows because you've got a shared goal, and you can find a common. So you're finding a common point.
Yeah.
So we didn't, and I think that's important to point out that we hadn't worked together 5 years ago, had we? I don't think we knew each other, and initially we've got to know one another, and just I think also both coming from a perspective where we're giving another person's view a chance.
I'd agree with that. I mean, I had briefly met Helen about the employment work, but I hadn't really known her. And when the Equally Well stuff started, there were a lot of things that I felt that I talked about here, which were some of those things I was concerned about. And I took them to Helen, and I almost confronted her. I remember you and I standing in the printing room one day, and I went, "Helen, have you ever thought of blah, 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 blah?" And she listened and took it seriously. And that was when we started, really. And that was when, this was in the super early days, and that's when I became a champion and we started working together more. And the more we worked together, the more we realised how aligned we were, but also how we could trust each other to have quite, not difficult conversations, but really frank ones, and checks and balances with each other. And so until now, Helen's one of my good friends, and that sort of came out of this. So I guess we could say it's an equally well relationship.
Very nicely done.
And I think it's
on brand.
I think it's also taking. I would take that, as an advisor, as a researcher. It's not my issue to own. I'm a servant. I'm a partner. I'm there to be advised by people, and if I can bring some expertise in, which is around digesting the information, get the research accurate, to get to policymakers, which I'm given the space and opportunity to do in my role, then how do I open those doors up, and how do we do that in a partnership way, isn't it? And so each can bring something to the masses to the table, and so therefore Equally Well got better and better because it's that there's a co-design, but also we've still got a long way to go. I'm not. We've got a lot to do in terms of the initiatives of Equally Well, some of the other areas in which we lead out. So I wouldn't want anyone to think that we had it all. Great. We've got an amazing platform. We've got we've certainly gone on a journey of 5 years, way beyond where we thought we would go. And then to have it here in Australia and in the UK, and also it's really important to point out to people, it's Australia leading there Equally Well, and it's the UK leading there Equally Well, and they asked us to come out to share, which is absolutely fantastic, isn't it?
It's such an honour.
It's an honour.
But we also realised really early, and Helen particularly has always been a real supporter of this, that partnership and those trust relationships and the relational aspects of all of the Equally Well stuff is very important. And it was really important that we acknowledge that in our relationship, and not role model, because I hate that whole idea of role modelling, but that we portrayed that and the respect. And there are times, occasionally, not often to be fair, but where we don't agree entirely, and we're good with that. And I think that was a big learning thing. And I think the other thing that we both do, and that other people I know do, that I think is really important, is that we have to sit in the presence of a lot of discomfort at times.
Yeah.
Like when we present together, there's some of that shaming that has come out, and you sit with that. But I've learned to actually welcome that discomfort, because it means one of two things. Either there's something there that needs challenging, and I'm thinking, and Helen does this too, how do we do that in ways that gets that message through? But also, sometimes it's, I'm feeling this discomfort, what is it I need to learn about myself? And open rather than shut. So it's been quite powerful, that kind of journey that we've been on together, and having someone to talk to about that too is really helpful. So I kind of welcome the feelings of discomfort now, because it means there's something happening.
Yeah, we're
that's
going to
important.
another place, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I think, but also let's just point out, we're this partnership and this mutual respect is something that is going around the whole collaborative, isn't it? You know, we, and certainly we have some discord as well.
Yes.
But you know, I had an event the other day where I invited a number of people to present who've not met one another, and now they're all emailing one another, and they're asking each other to stuff and sending each other information, and so and it's so that's I mean that's got to be the heart of it. It's got to be the platform from which to bring change.
Absolutely, and it's not wrong to disagree. It's actually part of it, because we each hold a piece of it, but none of us holds all of it.
You brought up that you were a little bit uneasy at the beginning of Equally Well, that you were fearful a bit that it was just another layer of scrutiny for people with mental illness. What were your concerns then?
So in the initial stages, and this was one of the rants at Helen in the photocopying room, but my thing was around, there was several layers to it, but one of them was our lives are, as people who experience mental health problems and access services, that our lives are over scrutinised already, that, you know, everything is looked at and judged and weighed, and you know, we are under a lot of scrutiny. And I was just really concerned that this would add a whole other layer of scrutiny to that, but also more discrimination and judgment around, you know, our weight, our laziness, or whatever people were going to think about that. I was really concerned about that. I was really concerned that no one had asked us if we wanted to live the extra years, because, to be honest, you know, unless our lives are worth living, why would you want that? And, you know, some of our decisions around how we live are made in that premise. So I was really concerned about that. So I sort of felt that maybe the lived experience voice in those days hadn't been quite there. And the last thing I was really concerned about was the impact of the statistics and stuff on people with lived experience when they suddenly realise that this is them, that these awful statistics actually belong to them, and that we had to be really sensitive about a lot of that. And so Helen and I raised all this with Helen, and this was when I hardly knew her back in the day, and I shouldn't say to my surprise, because it wasn't entirely, but Helen really listened, and she would come back and she'd go away and think about things, and she'd come back and talk to me about something, and then she'd invite me to be something, and we talked a lot, and we talked with other people as well. And what that culminated in, which I just loved this, was thinking about, because I was saying to her the things I'd said at the conference too about, I don't want anyone rushing at me with tape measures to measure my girth. We can all see my girth is not what other people's is, and it's a work in progress. You know, so what that all came about was a sensitivity to how people might work with people with lived experience around this, and how we also did key messaging and the way that we talked about that. So I still always hold those concerns a bit, because I think you've got to keep on top of it, and it's really easy for people with all the right intentions to patronisingly do that what's best for you thing. And I think the stopping smoking thing is a really good example of that, where, you know, I used to feel stalked by stopping smoking people. It was just super over the top, but and that was never going to work for me, but it was all about relational stuff, I guess, we learnt, and how we message things, and that respect for people, that we are talking about people who are just getting through. You know, they're doing whatever they need to get through. They're not doing anything wrong. It's not their fault, but this is something that we have to do things around, and that's how we talked about it. Like it wasn't more stigma, really.
Yeah, because also if you're not doing it in a supportive, sensitive way, then someone fails again, and then it further feels like it's them, and as opposed to, well, actually it's all these things are really complicated and hard. And I think the other thing we talked about very clearly was making sure there's several very clear contributing areas.
Yes.
So yes, it was about increasing exercise and nutrition, and often when we map stuff that's happening, it's all on the intervention side. And in fact, I've been very clear recently to say, if you're looking at lifestyle change interventions, they need to be peer-led, you know, in that sense. So yes, that's important, but also the known physical health impacts of psychiatric medication or psychotropic medication.
Yeah.
Again, a crucially important area, and we heard a lot about that over the last 2 days and how important that is to people. But it also making sure we say, because we separate general health and mental health and addiction services from the rest of health, and from primary care particularly, from geographically. You know, we have the General Hospital in Christchurch, and we have Princess Margaret, and it's all well signed, and we have one little sign and one different place for Hill Morton Hospital. You know, and we fund them separately, and we have a different geographical location, which makes it incredibly difficult to get some early intervention for diabetes, for example, if you're in the mental health or addictions hospital. So, you know, we've got to think differently about that. And then we've also been very clear about workforce development and workforce issues around diagnostic overshadowing particularly, and then the stuff all around socioeconomic issues, so people living in poorer quality homes, not having a job, not having a high income, all those things we know impact on physical health, so that people, and that's why I think the collaborative is wide, because people are going, oh well, I do policy, so I could perhaps do something there. You know, and I could do that. And also the other thing we've done, and I know lots of organisations in New Zealand have come on board because they've heard Caro and many others speak about their experience, but actually most importantly use it to think about how a system could change. So this is about a whole workforce of leaders, lived experience leaders, who have such great articulation of how the system can change, and are great. And so we've had a lot of organisations, a lot of the medical colleges particularly, come on board because they've heard Caro speak. They hadn't understood it. They hadn't understood that you might after the meds want to eat a table. I know that was one of the things you talked about. That, and I know that stuck with someone saying, I remember that. You said, because I had no idea that it wasn't because you didn't have willpower, Caro. It's because the meds made you just crazy. You know,
exactly.
That sort of
oh man.
And one of the big issues here has been, it's fantastic that we're getting a lot of traction, a lot of people signing up, the consensus statement here, but is it actually resulting in action? Are you seeing that?
Yeah, and we've got a real push as well to an action this year. You know, we are. I mean, there's lots of stuff that we can't even keep up with that's happening, and it's not even labelled equally well, which is also, it doesn't need to be. It's about people's awareness raising. We're going to have a real push in New Zealand on turning those endorsements even to more action. We're going to push out on oral health big time. Look at particularly also Māori and Pacifica health around mental health and addiction and culture. So again, a really important part. We've had a big push in the last year on addiction and physical health. Because there's a lot of stigma about particularly or discrimination around addiction and physical health, isn't there?
And I think in the early days it was easy, and I see it a bit here too, for people to jump on those lifestyle things because that's the obvious thing. And you know, there but what we're seeing in New Zealand is less of that now and more of strategic things that are happening that are enabling people to more easily look after their own physical health. Not that they weren't before, but it's just they didn't have access to things necessarily. And so we're seeing a more strategic push and also a recognition of this group as a priority group in a lot of the... Helen's been awesome at that. So, like I said, once she's got an idea in her head, she gets it.
Can you give an example though of that strategic shift that you're seeing?
Well,
I
so
think
our
CBD.
national so the national diabetes strategy, and that's down to a GP lead in the Ministry of Health, Helen Rodenberg, who again, great equally well champion. So it's not like this is all new. There were loads of people working across the country that we just found, and we just joined, but we just connected people really, and pushed again in areas. But she got the routine screening of people with using mental health or addiction services as a priority area for the national diabetes strategies, living well with diabetes. Said all people in contact with mental health and addiction services need routine screening by 2020. And then also we've had the Heart Foundation, and particularly the Chief Medical Officer, Jerry Devlin, very great advocate, talking around screening from age of 25 for CVD risk, and that was again as a result of a big piece of evidence review, and also again the Heart Foundation have sponsored work and further research in this area. So you see it snowball, and I think in all the I've worked in mental health and addiction services more than 25 years, and it's been one of the hardest things, because the subject is so hard and so terrible, but it's been the most amazing thing at the same time. We don't struggle to get people on board once you explain things, and it's a lovely, refreshing way to work. And every week we have someone ring up. I probably had 3 emails of people going, "What are you doing?" But that's about it, in hundreds and hundreds of people going, "Wow, I've been doing this and I'm a champion. How do I connect?"
And I think that's one of the things about an equally well collaborative that's awesome and maybe a bit different from other things, is that it's at all levels. So we hear stories all the time about individuals who do something that they're really happy with. Like I remember this guy who was a support worker who had a person he was working with who was young and had put on a lot of weight with the medications he was on, but was kind of struggling to find ways of moving more, and they suddenly found that he loved games, and so there was that whole thing of Pokemon Go.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And every day they went out walking looking for Pokemon on their phones, and he just got he felt so much better about himself, and he got fitter, and he loved it, and he became more socially integrated as well. So we'd hear stories like that, along with we'd hear that like the diabetes thing, so there's room for everyone, and we would, as we said in our thing, we would be friends with anyone. Like anyone who was interested, we said, join us. It didn't matter whether they were mental health or addiction. In fact, a lot of them weren't. Didn't matter if they weren't health, because we also had like employment and things like that. And that's the thing, people want to make it right, and they want to make it better. And so we just try and provide them with ways of doing that.
I do think we've got some opportunities, because we've got a review of the health and disability system at the moment, known as the Simpson Review, and that's a key vehicle for ensuring that people with mental health and addiction experience are a priority group for the rest of the health system. So we're looking to get that in that review. We've also got the response to the mental health and addiction services inquiry. Again, we want to see physical health and mental health a big part in that, because as much as we've got a groundswell of people, but there are some things at a policy and funding level that can make it a lot easier for us.
That is true.
We do need a dedicated funding stream so that people can go to primary care for annual checks. And have shared care arrangements.
And that it's easy for them to do that.
So we've got we're doing loads, but we also need some other shifting to just I'm a firm believer. You've got to bring life and implement policy. But if policy is a red flag, if it's a red light, then you can't go anywhere with it. We hope it'll be an amber. We definitely want it to be a green. But if it's an amber, we can push through.
We talked also that physical health is actually giving a kind of a green light, if we can go along with that more, to a human rights approach. Can you talk to that?
That was I loved that about this conference, and it's not that we hadn't noticed before, but I think it hadn't popped so much, was that whole idea, and of course it's true, physical health is a right in every country, Australia, New Zealand, and yet here we were allowing these things to happen that were harming people, and taking away that right. And so, we've been really thinking about that a lot, eh?
Yes, and at that point around the inequity in the way in which a mental health or addictions unit or service looks compared to cardiology or a cancer treatment service, and then there's hairdressing and others, and support. So
that,
it's
really stood out. That, and we've always said that mental health and addiction is the poor cousin of health, but when it came to it, it's so much more than that. It's just that it's invisible there, and we have to work together to make this work better for people. Because, the shame of this is, the huge shame, is that people are dying of things that are treatable and preventable.
But it's interesting, isn't it, that there's always been a struggle to get attention on things like over-medication, polypharmacy, etc. But that this seems to actually be what's putting the attention on.
I have to say, in the early days of our Equally Well, there was a lot, we say the system fights back when you try and change it, and it's true. And that was one of the things that we had to fight for, Helen. Do you remember? They didn't want that published, and they didn't want that, and I don't even know who they was now. But
what was it that they didn't want published?
The facts about what psychopharmacology was doing to people, and how bad the actual, like when we found the research, and it was much worse than even we thought. And there was a pushback about all of that, and I remember talking to a psychiatrist about that, and one of the things he said is, if people knew about these, well, we don't like to call them side effects anymore, what is it we're calling them now?
the known physical health impacts.
Yeah, the known physical health impacts of taking.
Well, side effects sounds like, it might, whereas, but we know,
and I'd been talking to him about weight gain and stuff like that, and he said, but if we tell people that, they won't take their meds. And there was a lot of that, but that actually has shifted quite a bit. Because we've talked about it, and because we've had amazing consumer leaders, we've had amazing leaders from health, we've had amazing psychiatry.
So we've got a whole group of psychiatrists doing excellent research in the area and leading out.
And we got them together.
Yeah, exactly. On lowest, well, not necessarily prescribing first, but also then lowest dose for shortest amount possible, and supported withdrawal. Yeah. So supported withdrawal.
So recovery influenced. Yeah. I think that's what we called them, didn't we, initially?
Recovery-focused prescribing. Yeah.
And then the withdrawal guide. So, they're finally, 40 years I've been taking psych medications. Finally, there is an outward acknowledgement that they create these conditions. For years and years and years, there was a complete denial about that. But it's an out thing now. And the patient blaming thing was a really big thing for me in the early days, like I said, and a worry, because we already fail it so much, it feels like, even though I think we're amazing and terrifically strong. But it was another thing to feel ashamed about, not only do I have this, but I'm this, fat, useless person. That's how I used to feel. Now I don't feel that at all. I just think I'm a slightly fit person.
Slightly fit is great.
But I think there's lots to learn from the work, the equity or the literature and experiences across the board. Because whenever there's a group who experience disadvantage or a lack of power, we turn the blame. It's too easy for the system to blame the person rather than look at the system. So we're really going, well, what does the system do? Let's stop blaming the person. It is really hard because you're on medication. And then if you're going to have diabetes treatment, you've got to go to a different physical building. And so then rather than, and people say, well, we get lots of DNA, so do not shows, do not attend when we refer people through to cancer or treatments or diabetes. Well, because people are concerned, or they didn't get the letter, or
because they don't have transport.
They don't have transport, so rather than go, well, and also I think we've got to move away from some stereotype that people who experience mental health or addiction issues are less compliant with medication than the rest of the population.
So what would be your takeaways from this conference here?
Well, we've got a list of stuff to take back to New Zealand, but takeaway in terms of the tone, and then I'll talk about the New Zealand stuff perhaps. But takeaway, I just think, the energy and the diversity of people that I've met. Very strong, energetic and positive and informed lived experience. Delegate.
Amazing leaders.
Amazing. So that feels good. It feels good in the room, doesn't it?
Yeah. And
so
family too. There were some
family,
amazing family people as well. And I think one of the takeaways for me is to be more mindful about inclusion of family people and how we work together, because I think that's important.
There were some tough conversations though, Caro?
There really were at times, and it was interesting watching people negotiate how to frame things up. I tell you what, there was a whole pile of really respectful challenges made. Very clear and respectful. And on the main part, I think they were received really well. I was super impressed with that.
Could you give insights for people who weren't in the room, without naming names or anything, but just to say what sorts of issues become contested and what do you do about them?
One of the ones was around including trauma-informed care and we have adverse childhood events on our thing in New Zealand now because of understanding the impact of trauma on people's mental health, and it was a really good challenge to a very medical focused presentation, and the way she put it was, I thought, really
take the person out of it. It's about the role you're in, and I'm just needing to provide some feedback on here. Really incredibly well done. But also
that was cool.
And also we didn't include trauma-informed care and the ACE stuff in the first review, and then people came back very clearly and said it was missing, and in the next iteration it's in there. But also it's that appreciation that we cannot improve the physical health screening and checking without it being trauma-informed. We cannot do that, and I think that I learned that. I hadn't appreciated it. It's like, great, this is the great, and this is if you charge forward with your worldview without in partnership, you actually, it's worse.
It can damage people, and that was some of that stuff that I was worried about early on, but it definitely does come out that way. And I think one of the takeaways for me was I loved Simon's presentation
on the exercise.
And he started when he started off. I was like, oh God, it's that exercise thing again. It's not always my favourite, just saying, but he went through this amazing presentation and then really clearly talked about, why it's hard sometimes, and that there's no point in sort of forcing people to do things, and would we expect the same of the general population? He normalised a huge part of it. So one of the things I'm taking back is that, and looking at how we normalise things and how we make sure our stuff is focused in the most helpful way. And I loved how he talked about, this was my favourite, but this because it has a personally impact for me. He talked about, don't worry about losing weight, the whole thing is about getting fit. Now that I can kind of do, like I said, mini fit, getting there.
Measuring your cardio rate, actually,
rather than your weight. Because
I
I think there was so much shame wrapped around weight and around the way media drives how we look and stuff. And when you take psych meds, you are a different shape, more beautiful, I think, these days. No, that's not true, I don't really, but I do think it's a really cool shape. So I loved that. I really loved that.
And I think also that recognition that you can't just dump something that works for most of the population without it being the right, or not, it doesn't, onto you need to tailor and intensify and make it and have it led by the communities who are affected, whether that's about culture, whether it's about any disability. You've got to have the people who are affected leading that. That the way in which it's designed and shaped, you've got to do it. Otherwise, what happens is it doesn't work.
That's right.
And then you go, I tried that.
Or else it's patronising.
I
think that was the other really good message of this one. We know what's best. Nah, actually, you don't. So let's hear from the people who do know what's best, which really is themselves. Love that.
Like nurses here, GPs here, pharmacists here, psychiatrists here.
Lived pharmacists was great.
Right, and we're. I mean, I guess it is the opportunity for us to take back and say to Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Yep.
This is happening because of you. It's not happening
Yeah.
because of Caro. I mean,
No.
it's so we're here, but we're here on behalf of this whole
Yeah.
group of people in New Zealand
Who are
doing
amazing.
amazing
Yeah.
work, and we've got thousands of equally world champions.
Yeah.
I reckon thousands.
Yeah,
Do you reckon say
reckon-
thousands rather than just 100?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I reckon
definitely thousands. And
Yeah.
everybody's doing the bits
Yeah.
that they do, and
Yeah,
some
they're
bits are
amazing. People are
huge,
amazing.
some bits
Yeah.
are not that big, but it all really is making a difference. And
Yeah.
I will be interested to see in 10 years' time
Yeah.
what our stats are looking like, because I think the things we're doing now, because it's not something that's going to change by next week or next year.
Yeah.
We have legacies left of people who will still die early because of what their histories have been. But I reckon in 10 years we'll start to see the difference. And I already see a big difference in the way people talk about physical health and mental health, the way they talk about people who access services now as people rather than, problems. So it not only affects people's physical health, but it's how they're seen in the world as well, and I love that. So I'm going to take back a strength human rights approach as well, because you said that too. So we both feel incredibly lucky to have been involved in this, and Helen really started this, and I came along soon after, and you're right, there's been heaps of leaders, but
heaps
what
of leaders.
an honour, eh?
Oh, yeah, to see it here. So I wish I'd been able to bring all
I
of
do
you to
too.
sit on one level, but we also, we're going to go back and
Yeah.
we're going to regroup and just bring our collaborative again together, not necessarily this year, and we do it virtually. We're going to look at some webinars this year and just bring some more people together and do some great, continue growing and sustaining it, because equally well's not going to be one of those flash in the pan things.
No.
It's here to
It can't be.
it's here to stay.
Yeah, and that's right. And people did talk about the relationship Helen and I obviously have, and but we have those with lots of people, don't we?
Yeah.
Well, ours is a bit special.
Now, last words before they kick us out of here.
Yeah.
But any final words that you would like
No, I
to
just
tell people about?
go well, Australia.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what Australia does.
Yeah,
And we've
it's not
made-
the Pavlova thing, though, is it?
No,
because it
no,
did
it's all
start
right.
in New Zealand.
Yeah,
that's
Pavlova
important.
is Kiwi soy
That-
lamingtons.
Yeah, and so equally well is too.
Yeah, equally
Yeah.
well as New
Yeah.
Zealand. Yeah, and that Australia's
But-
just copying us, but
No.
they're
But-
quite keen to have Jacinda.
Yes.
And you're not taking Jacinda. Sorry, she's ours.
But I think in seriousness, I think that Australia have got a great groundswell of interest.
Yeah.
Amazing to see the journey
Yeah.
in the last, even just in the last year. I think all hats off to Russell
Yeah.
and Chris and all those in that kind of support team. They're doing an awesome job, and they're doing it juggling with other jobs.
Yeah.
So it's way surpassed what I was expecting.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. And I'm
Yeah.
excited to see where it goes, and how we can grow and learn together. We've made a lot of new connections who we will be connecting with, after this. So it feels really exciting, doesn't it? And it just
Adds
it's-
value to everything we're doing.
It
Sorry.
totally
Yeah.
does. No, that's exactly right. And
Yeah.
so I feel inspired.
Yeah.
Thank you both very much.